and welcome to the Introduction to Political Science 2301, the History of Political Thought 1. I'm your teaching assistant, Kevin O'Mara, and today I'm just going to give you a brief introduction to ancient Greece, Plato's literary method, and the Republic in particular. I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to historically situate you when you read Plato, maybe for the first time, and also give a bit of an analysis or teach you how to analyze the Republic by giving my own reading of the first couple of pages of the Republic. Ancient Greece shaped Western civilization through their incredible art, scientific discoveries, and mode of rational inquiry. Greek culture was passed down to and through the Romans, influenced Christian thought, led to the Italian Renaissance, and continues to exert its influence through its conceptions of beauty, science, and politics. But how did some people living off the coast of the Mediterranean Sea some 2,500 years ago come to shape the way we think even today? Ancient Greece, also known as Hellas, was mostly located in present-day Greece in the Aegean Sea, spanning from present-day Turkey all the way to Italy and even southern France. People were united by a common language and set of religious beliefs. Gods like Zeus and Athena, as spoken of in myths and tales by poets like Homer and Hesiod, were commonly celebrated through pagan rituals. Given ancient Greece's many islands and great harbors along popular trade routes, Greece became a popular hub for other cultures to trade, both goods and ideas. Greece provided faraway lands like Egypt, Carthage, and even India with olives and seafood, while in return, the harbors became breeding grounds for the sharing of beliefs, scientific discoveries, and spiritualities. The Golden Age of ancient Greece was from about 500 before Common Era to 338 BCE, spanning from the democratization of Athens to the conquering of Greece by Philip II of Macedon, father to Alexander the Great. During this period, there was a great flourishing of art and science. Many scientific and mathematical discoveries were made during this period, and disciplines like biology, logic, and trigonometry were developed by the Greeks. While we could speak about many aspects of Greek culture, its theater, the wars with the Persians, or even its cool pillars, I'm going to focus on the politics and philosophy as discovered in Athens. It's at this point that I'm going to turn the presentation into a bit of a vacation presentation. So you can see here a picture of myself and my partner Gray at the Parthenon at the Acropolis in Athens. Athens was, according to existing information, the world's first democracy. It was a complicated political system whereby all citizens could vote on collective issues. People were able to gather in public spaces, like the Agora, pictured here, and voice their concerns about the politics of the Athenian polis. Although Athenian democracy was limited, due to its exclusion of women, slaves, and migrants from the voting process, only about 30% of the population were citizens and had a say, this form of political arrangement was the source of influence for all democracies in the world today. It was in this context that Plato wrote his dialogues. Plato was born in the year 427 before Common Era and died in 347 BCE, having spent most of his years in Athens. Plato's real name was Aristocles, but he adopted his nickname after the Greek word meaning broad because of his broad chest and prowess in wrestling. Plato is best known for opening what is thought to be the first school in the Western world, the Academy, pictured here, and also for writing dialogues, often featuring his friend and mentor, Socrates, pictured here. While Western philosophy predated Plato and his writings about Socrates, all of these predecessors are known as the pre-Socratics, highlighting the degree to which Socrates was a pivotal point in the history of Western philosophy. Socrates himself wrote nothing. He is only known through the writings of Plato and other contemporaries. Plato's writings have been so influential, the logician Alfred Whitehead argued that Western philosophy is, quote, but a series of footnotes to Plato. Friedrich Nietzsche argued that Christianity was Platonism for the people, which we'll explore a little bit further on in our discussions on St. Augustine. The scientific revolution and the Enlightenment can also be partially attributed to the rediscovery of ancient Greek texts, like Plato's, during the Italian Renaissance in the 15th century. The importance of this early philosophy is that its mode of inquiry was not mythical, but rational. It attempted to understand the world based on critical questioning and empirical observation, rather than accepting conclusions based on mere faith. Philosophy itself is a Greek word derived from two roots, philo, which means love, and sophia, meaning wisdom. This love of wisdom was expressed through the examination of the world and the development of critical abstract theories to explain its features. You are probably unfamiliar or maybe even uncomfortable with Plato's style of writing, but don't worry, you're not alone here. Rather than writing a traditional philosophical treatise or a political exegesis, Plato instead wrote exclusively in dialogue form, wherein interlocutors argue about abstract concepts like justice and the good, and often fail to come to a meaningful compromise or resolution. This was unusual even for philosophers at the time, and adds a peculiar literary element to Plato's works. Rather than being able to tell exactly what Plato believes, whether through Socrates or his interlocutors, Plato's honest opinions on philosophical matters are instead only hinted at in the dialogues. This is intentional. The various contradictory positions held by interlocutors in the dialogues, like the Republic, mirrors the contradictions that exist in our own social world, where we are often left not with answers, but with even deeper mysteries and more questions than we began with. This should not be mistaken for mistakes in Plato's writings. He was deeply aware of the often unsatisfactory conclusions in the dialogues, and instead critically invites the reader to engage with the dialectic that is shared between the interlocutors at every stage of the dialogues. Every part of the dialogue contributes to the whole. While one could consider Socrates to be Plato's true voice, Socrates himself was a master of irony, and is often tough to determine what the literary Socrates himself actually believed. Socrates often adopts the guise of an ignorant man who knows nothing, usually when confronted by a sophist. A sophist, also derived from the word sophia, is someone who is paid to teach, usually teaching ethics, rhetoric, and law. When sophists arrogantly assert their knowledge and its value, Socrates often ironically indicates that he does not understand quite what they are saying, and asks questions to its interlocutors, until they contradict themselves and no longer have confidence in their own intellect and ideas. This method of learning by asking questions, now known as the Socratic method, should also be considered a genuine way of learning from others, so long as they are good-natured. The myriad ways of interpreting Plato at different levels of irony allows for many different readings, which showcases the importance of engaging closely with the dialogues firsthand. We are forced to ask ourselves what Socrates and Plato really believe, and to what extent his teachings are not meant to convey a complete system of knowledge, but instead a critical pedagogy of questioning everything and never accepting a surface-level explanation. In this sense, the form and substance in Plato are indistinguishable, and the medium becomes a significant part of the message. It is with this method in mind that we are organizing the course, and it is with that I will engage in a brief analysis of the beginning of Plato's Republic. A quick note before we begin speaking about the Republic. In this analysis, I will be using the so-called Stephanus notation. The section numbers you can see in the margins of the text. As Plato's dialogues were passed down over thousands of years from their original papyrus, rescribed and translated, a definitive collection of Plato's writings was put together by Henricus Stephanus in 1578. The Stephanus pagination in the margins refers to the original page numbers in his collection, and allows you and I to refer to the same sections together, even if we have different editions or translations of Plato's works. As you can see from your copy, the Republic begins at 327a, when Socrates goes down to the Piraeus, the harbor town of Athens. To begin this textual analysis, it's worth noting that the start of the Republic is unusual for philosophical texts at the time. While many of the pre-Socratic authors began treatises by paying homage to the Muses, Plato simply writes that Socrates walked down to a harbor with Glaucon, who in real life was Plato's brother. The beginning of the dialogue is also peculiar because it indicates that Socrates and Glaucon had no intention of spending 250 pages speaking about the nature of justice, but were just going down to pray and watch a festival. As they begin to return to Athens, the two men are stopped by acquaintances who aggressively demand their company. When Socrates asks at 327c if he could persuade the men to let him go, Polemarchus responds, "Could you persuade us if we won't listen?" Although this may read as a humorous beginning of the dialogue, it already sets the intellectual stage for the argumentation to come. What good is argumentation if force doesn't listen? And what's the point of even engaging in dialogue or politics if force will ultimately decide? When Socrates reaches the house of Cephalus, an old friend, he immediately asks the elder what it's like to be an elder. Cephalus says at 329c that as we grow old, our desire for sex and other worldly pleasures diminishes, freeing us from, quote, many mad masters, end quote. This too sets the stage for much of the dialogue. The relationship between passions and reason crops up again and again in many important ways in the dialogue, and introduces a fundamental question of what is the good, that which merely feels good, or that which embodies goodness in some other way. When Cephalus presents a traditional conception of justice, that one must give to each what they are entitled, Socrates counters that one ought not return a borrowed weapon to a friend who intends to kill them both. While his interlocutors agree, this fundamental distinction between contract law and that which is just immediately begins to demonstrate the difficulty of determining the nature of justice. It is clear from this example that true justice does not correspond with the usual conventionally accepted definitions of justice, nor is it simply the law that must be followed. What is just transcends both conventions and the law. This begins the discussions that comprise the main topic of the paper. What is justice, and how can one live a just life? When Socrates continues to prod on this point, Cephalus just laughs and leaves to make a sacrifice. This moment could be read as a testament to the old style of doing things: be pious and believe in the gods. There's no need to engage with the frivolities of philosophical justification. It could also be read as an example of Socrates' reputation as an annoying troll whose sole purpose is to question the foundations of everyone's belief systems. Socrates continues to undermine the foundations of his interlocutor's beliefs when Polemarchus attempts to continue arguing where his father left off. When he repeats the argument, Socrates rebuts at 331e, quote, "It isn't easy to doubt Simonides, for he is a wise and godlike man. But what exactly does he mean? Perhaps you know, Polemarchus, but I didn't understand him." End quote. This is a clear example of the Socratic method, and perhaps Socratic irony, that then sets a tone for the rest of the Republic, wherein Socrates humbly asks questions and dialogically develops his own ideas regarding wisdom, justice, and the relationship between humans and their cities. That concludes the brief analysis of the beginning of the Republic. This isn't meant necessarily to help you write your essay in particular, but is meant to kind of embody yourself in the context of ancient Greece and Plato's method in particular. Now, something you may not have known is that Socrates was condemned to death by a democratic jury in Athens in the year 399 before Common Era, primarily for corrupting the youth. As you read through the Republic and its discussions of democracy and justice, think about the way this event, as well as the context Plato was writing in, influenced the ideas that he was writing about. Perhaps more importantly, pay close attention to what is being said, by whom, and what is not being said. Before people can learn, they must be willing to listen. Plato's writing style rewards those who read between the lines, so try your best to respect the text as a whole before jumping to quick conclusions about either its quality or its content. The importance of the text in the long run may not be in the answers it provides, but the types of questions it causes us to ask, and the mode of inquiry it inspires us to continue in our everyday lives outside the text. In his dialogue, The Phaedrus, Plato wrote that, quote, "Written words cannot defend themselves the way we defend ourselves in conversation," end quote, which only goes to exemplify the strange and difficult times we find ourselves in during the COVID crisis. Much like Plato, I am unable to communicate with you to clarify my thoughts and have my sophistic authority be ruthlessly questioned, because I am trapped in this video. Unlike Plato, however, I will have office hours on Monday, May 11th from noon to 2 p.m. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on Monday if you have any questions, and remember, the unexamined life is not worth living.